My name is Elena. I am 38 years old, and my life is built on a very big secret. I have a wonderful husband named Caleb, who builds beautiful things with his rough, tired hands. And I have an ex-lover named Dominic, a powerful billionaire who builds empires using nothing but lies. For 10 long years, I lived a very quiet and peaceful life in a small, sleepy town. I kept a secret hidden deep in my heart because I knew the truth could destroy my family. I thought Dominic came back into our lives because he wanted to save our young daughter. But I was very wrong about his heart. He did not come back to be a hero. He only came back because he wanted a photo to show the world how kind he was. However, one simple medical test changed everything we thought we knew about our lives. To understand why I had to tell a lie, we must go back 10 years into the past. Back then, I was 28 years old and working as an assistant for Dominic. I was young, and I truly believed that I was in love with a powerful man. But the very moment I told Dominic I was pregnant, his kind mask fell away. He did not smile at me, and he did not give me a warm hug. Instead, he stood up and threw an envelope full of money onto his big desk. "Get rid of it," he said in a voice that was as cold as ice. I shook my head while tears ran down my face and whispered that I was keeping the baby. Dominic's eyes turned very dark, and he stepped closer to me with a dangerous look. "If you ruin my perfect image with a scandal, my lawyers will take that child away," he threatened. "I have millions of dollars, Elena, and you have absolutely nothing in your pockets. Who do you think a judge will believe in a court of law?" he asked with a mean smirk. I felt a cold terror grip my heart because I knew he was not joking with me. I knew he would take my precious baby just to win a fight and protect his name. So I did the only thing a scared mother could do. I ran away as fast as I could. I moved far away to a tiny town where nobody knew my name or my past. That is the place where I met Caleb, a man who changed my life forever. Caleb was the exact opposite of a man like Dominic in every single way. Caleb was a simple carpenter who spent his days working with wood and tools. He did not wear expensive suits or work in a giant office made of glass. He had rough hands and clothes that always smelled like fresh sawdust and pine. But Caleb had the kindest and most gentle eyes I had ever seen in my life. When he found out I was pregnant and all alone, he did not judge me or walk away. He chose to stay by my side and protect us when we had nowhere else to go. I remember one quiet evening in our small, dusty garage many years ago. Caleb was working very late, his face focused under the warm glow of a single light. He was carefully carving a piece of wood, turning something plain into something beautiful. He spent many weeks shaping that wood and sanding it until it was as smooth as silk. It was a small wooden horse for our daughter, Maya. I watched him wipe the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve while he worked. He looked very tired, but he was smiling a deep, happy smile. Caleb never told me about the things he gave up for us, but I saw his secret sacrifices. I saw him skip his lunch every single day just to save $5 for our family. I saw him wear old work boots with big holes in the bottom for months. He did this just so he could buy Meyer a new storybook to read at bedtime. He gave us everything he had, even when his own pockets were completely empty. I used to believe that money was the only way to have real power in this world, but then I saw Caleb holding Maya and rocking her to sleep with his calloused hands. I realized then that a real father is not just the man who pays the monthly bills. A real father is the man who pays attention to the small, important things. For a long time, our life felt perfect, but that peace did not last forever. It started to break very slowly, like a window hit by a tiny, sharp stone. It all began on a very normal Tuesday afternoon while I was in the kitchen. Maya came home from school early, but she did not run through the front door. She walked very slowly and dragged her feet across the floor as if she were exhausted. Her backpack looked way too heavy for her small, tired shoulders to carry. "I am very tired, Mommy," she said in a voice that was barely a whisper. She did not ask for a snack or go to her room to play with her toys. Instead, she just lay down on the sofa and closed her eyes right away. I thought it was just a small cold or the flu. I told myself to stay calm. I covered her with a warm blanket and told her she would feel better tomorrow. But when tomorrow came, Maya did not feel better at all. In fact, she felt much worse, and that was when I first noticed the marks. I was helping her change her clothes when I saw small purple bruises on her legs. They looked like dark, scary clouds moving across her very pale skin. I asked her if she had fallen down while playing at school. "No," she whispered back to me. "I do not remember falling at all." Caleb came home late that night, looking very tired from his long day at the workshop. He was covered in gray wood dust and smelled like the pine trees he worked with all day. I felt my heart racing as I pulled up Maya's pajama legs to show him the strange purple bruises. Caleb frowned and touched her forehead very gently with his warm, rough hand. "Maybe she just needs some vitamins to make her blood strong again," he said softly. We sat at the kitchen table and checked our small bank account to see how much money we had. We did not have much extra money left that month, but we had enough to buy her medicine. I tried to be brave and told myself that we were in control of this scary situation. I told myself that all parents worry too much and that everything would be okay soon. The very next morning, we took Maya to the small medical clinic in the center of town. The doctor was a very kind man with white hair and a gentle, caring smile. He checked her throat and used a cold metal tool to listen to the rhythm of her heart. "She is just a growing girl," the doctor said as he patted Maya's hand kindly. "It looks like a small infection, or maybe her body just needs a bit more iron." He told us there was nothing to worry about and gave us a paper for some vitamins. I felt a giant weight lift off my shoulders and I could finally breathe again. I looked at Caleb and smiled, feeling so thankful that our daughter was going to be fine. He squeezed my hand and said, "See, she is tough and strong just like her dad." We went home feeling very light and happy, as if the sun had finally come out. That night, I cooked Maya's favorite pasta, and the kitchen smelled like garlic and joy. Caleb told silly jokes and made funny faces until Maya giggled, even though she was pale. I truly believed in my heart that our little family was safe and very lucky. I whispered a quiet thank you to the walls of our warm, happy home. But I did not know that luck is a very fragile thing that can break in a second. 3 days later, the real storm hit our house and changed our lives forever. It was a quiet Saturday morning, and Maya was sitting at the table coloring a picture. Suddenly, she dropped her bright red crayon, and it rolled across the floor. "Mommy," she said, and her voice sounded very strange and very small. I turned around from the sink and saw something that made my blood run cold. Bright red blood was pouring from her nose and staining her pretty white shirt. It was not just a little bit of blood, it was a fast stream that would not stop. I grabbed a clean towel and rushed to her side, crying out her name in fear. "Keep your head back, sweetie," I screamed as the white towel turned dark red. Maya's eyes rolled back into her head, and she suddenly collapsed into my arms. She felt so heavy and was so still that I began to scream for my husband. Caleb rushed in from the garage and saw the blood and our little girl lying limp. His face went as white as a sheet, but he did not stop to ask any questions. He scooped Maya up into his strong arms and ran as fast as he could to the car. I followed him, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely open the door. The drive to the big hospital was a scary blur of red lights and deep, dark fear. I felt like my heart had stopped beating inside my chest as we rushed through traffic. We sat in the emergency room for 4 long hours that felt like 100 years. Finally, a specialist doctor came out to talk to us, but he was not smiling. He asked us to sit down and spoke in a low voice about the blood tests they ran. He used big medical words like platelets and bone marrow that were hard to hear. Then he said the one word that destroyed our entire world in a single second: leukemia. It was a very aggressive type of cancer, and she needed to start treatment tonight. He talked about the high costs and the long hospital stay, but I could not hear him. There was a loud ringing in my ears, and I looked over at Caleb's frozen face. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach as hard as they could. Later that night, we sat in the hallway, and Caleb slowly took out his worn-out wallet. He looked at the hospital papers and saw the huge numbers that we had to pay. "I do not have it, Elena," he whispered as he paced back and forth in the hall. "I do not have enough money to save her," he said, running his hands through his hair. Then he stopped and looked at me with eyes that were full of total desperation. "I will sell my truck," he said, even though he needed it every day for his work. "I will sell all my tools, the saws, the drills, and my grandfather's vintage planer." He was talking very fast, trying to fix a problem that felt impossible to solve. "But those tools are your whole life, Caleb," I said, grabbing his shaking arm. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and shouted, "I love her more than my life." Caleb slid down the wall and buried his face in his hands, sobbing quietly. My strong, steady husband was breaking into pieces right in front of me. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me because I knew the tools would never be enough. Later that night, the hospital room was very quiet, except for the soft sounds of the machines. Beep, beep, beep. Maya was asleep in the big white bed, looking so tiny and fragile. Caleb pulled a chair next to her and did not talk about the money or the tools anymore. He took an apple and a small pocket knife from his bag and began to peel it. He worked slowly, making one long, perfect strip of red skin for her to see. He focused on that apple as if it were the most important job in the whole world. His hands were steady again as he placed the sweet slices in a bowl for her. Then he took Maya's small hand into his own rough, calloused hand and just held it. He sat there for many hours, watching her chest rise and fall as she breathed. I watched them from the corner of the room, feeling a moment of peace in the dark, but I knew in my heart that silence does not stop a storm from coming. I prayed for the medicine to work, but deep down, I felt a terrible choice was waiting. On a Tuesday, the doctor called us into his office with a very pale and serious face. "The medicine is not working fast enough," he said, looking down at his desk. "Maya needs a bone marrow transplant to survive, and it is her only chance." Caleb stood up immediately and said, "Take mine. I am her dad. Take whatever you need." He offered his blood and his marrow without even thinking about his own safety. But the doctor sighed and looked at his clipboard with a very sad expression. We checked your blood type, Caleb, and the markers are very different from hers. It means the chance of you being a match is extremely low, the doctor explained. Caleb looked very confused because a parent is usually a match for their child. The doctor adjusted his glasses and said this was very unusual for a biological father. He said we needed to do a DNA test right away to find the right genetic parent. Do the test, Caleb said confidently. Prove to them that I am her father. I felt like I could not breathe, and I wanted to stop the world from turning. We waited for 24 hours, and it felt like 24 years of waiting in the dark. The next morning, the doctor put a piece of paper on the desk and looked at Caleb. I am so sorry, Caleb, but the results confirm that you are not the biological father. The silence in that room was louder than any scream I have ever heard in my life. Caleb did not yell or throw things. He just sat there staring at the floor, looking frozen. He looked like a statue that was slowly crumbling into pieces from the inside out. Elena, he whispered in a cracked voice, who is he? Who is the real father? I closed my eyes and whispered the name I had tried to forget, Dominic Blackwood. Caleb looked up at me with red, watery eyes, and I could see the trust disappearing. You lied to me, he said softly, for 10 years, every birthday and every Christmas. He looked at his hands, the hands that built Maya's crib and peeled her apples. The room was so quiet that all we could hear was the ticking of the clock. Caleb took a deep breath, fighting back his tears, and stood up very slowly. He did not look at me. Instead, he looked toward the door and spoke very coldly. Call him, Caleb said. Call him and save my daughter's life right now. I felt my heart break into a million pieces because I knew I was losing him. I had to face the monster I ran away from 10 long years ago to save Maya. I managed to get a meeting with Dominic only because I told him about the DNA test. I walked into his massive office made of glass in the center of the big city. Dominic looked very stressed because his company was having many big problems. The news was calling him the coldest boss in the world, and his reputation was bad. When I told him about Maya, he did not show any love or even a single emotion. He just checked his expensive watch and said he was too busy to help us. She will die without a donor, I begged him while crying in front of his desk. I am a stranger to her, and I have a company to save, he replied very coldly. I turned to leave, feeling completely hopeless, but then his assistant whispered to him. She talked about things like redemption and stock markets and becoming a hero. Dominic's eyes narrowed as he looked at a graph on his digital tablet and smiled. It was a fake smile that did not reach his eyes, and I felt a chill. Fine, he said, I will pay to find the best donor in the whole world for her. But there are conditions, he added. This must be a massive media event. He wanted cameras to record the reunion so the world would think he was kind. He also demanded that Maya take his last name and become Maya Blackwood for the press. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach because he was using our sick child. He was turning our dying daughter into a marketing tool to save his own name. She already has a father, I said with a shaking voice. His name is Caleb. Can Caleb pay for an international donor search? Dominic asked with a mean smile. I stayed silent because I knew the answer, and I signed the papers to save her. I felt like I was selling my soul to a devil just to save a little angel. Dominic found a donor, but he also turned the hospital into a movie set. He gave the hospital money so they would let him film everything with his crew. Dominic moved Maya to a fancy VIP room that looked more like a hotel than a hospital. On the day of her recovery, Dominic arrived with a full camera crew and bright lights. Action, the director yelled, and Dominic sat by Maya's bed to play his role. He held her small, pale hand and looked into the camera with a sad, caring face. "You are so brave, my little girl," he said, using words meant for the audience. Maya looked very confused because she was still very weak from the heavy medicine. "Where is Daddy Caleb?" she whispered, looking around the room for the man she loved. Dominic suddenly yelled "cut" and let go of her hand as if she were something dirty. He took a wet wipe and cleaned his fingers while snapping at me to keep Caleb away. "The carpenter ruins the story," Dominic hissed, wanting the world to see only him. I stood in the corner biting my lip because I wanted to scream at his cruelty. Outside the room, a large security guard was blocking the path to the door. Caleb was standing in the corridor, wearing his old, dusty work clothes. "I am her family," Caleb shouted, but the guard said he was not on the list. Caleb had to stand by the window and watch a stranger pretend to love his daughter. He looked so small and defeated as he pressed his hand against the cold glass. He leaned his forehead against the window and closed his eyes in silent, deep pain. Maya recovered because the donor marrow worked, but Dominic was not finished yet. He organized a massive press conference in the hospital's beautiful garden. There was a stage and hundreds of reporters with cameras ready to capture the moment. Dominic wanted to introduce Maya Blackwood to the world as his own. They dressed Maya in a fancy, expensive dress that was very stiff and scratchy. I stood to the side, while Caleb stayed at the very back, hidden in the shadows. Dominic took the microphone, and the cameras flashed like lightning in the sky. "Today I present to you my greatest achievement," Dominic announced to the crowd. "My daughter, Maya Blackwood," he said, and all the people began to cheer loudly. Then he smiled and said he had a very special gift to welcome her to the family. A man walked out with a real white pony that had a golden bridle around its head. "A pony for a princess," Dominic declared, telling Maya to come give him a hug. This was the photo he wanted, the perfect image that would save his failing company. Maya stared at the big pony as it snorted loudly, and she took a step back in fear. "It is okay," Dominic whispered harshly. "Just smile and hold the reins for the camera." But Maya looked past the pony and saw Caleb standing in the back of the crowd. Maya did not care about the script or the expensive white pony standing on the grass. She did not care about the hundreds of cameras or the billionaire's cold, fake smile. She looked past the flashing lights and saw Caleb standing alone in the shadows. Caleb was holding a small brown paper bag and was not smiling for the reporters. He was just watching her closely, ready to catch her if she happened to fall. Suddenly, Maya ran as fast as she could, rushing right past the shocked billionaire. She ran past the expensive pony and the assistants who tried to stop her. "Maya, come back here right now," Dominic shouted, forgetting to act kind for the crowd. But Maya ran straight through the reporters and threw herself into Caleb's strong arms. "Daddy," she sobbed loudly as Caleb fell to his knees to hold her tight. He buried his face in her neck, and the cameras quickly turned away from the stage. They captured the image of the billionaire standing alone with a confused pony. The world saw the simple carpenter holding the little girl as if he held the whole world. Maya pulled back and wiped her tears, asking Caleb if he had brought her special gift. Caleb's hands were shaking as he reached into the paper bag and pulled out the wooden horse. It was not an expensive toy, but it was smooth, polished, and made with true love. Maya grabbed the small horse and held it up high for all the cameras to see. "I do not want his pony," she shouted to the world. "I want my dad. He made this." I whispered to myself that she had finally chosen the man who truly loved her. The The garden went silent except for the wind and the frantic clicking of the cameras. The reporters zoomed in on the hug, and I saw the mask of the billionaire finally break. Dominic realized the script was ruined, and the world was seeing his true, ugly colors. He was not a hero. He was just a businessman trying to buy a child's affection. His face turned a deep, angry red as he realized he had lost control of the moment. "Cut the feed, turn off the cameras right now," Dominic screamed at the crew. He threw his microphone onto the ground with a loud thud that echoed everywhere. He did not sound like a father. He sounded like a child who had lost a game. He glared at the camera crew and told them to delete every bit of the footage. But the men did not stop because the live stream was already seen by millions. Dominic looked at Maya one last time with eyes that were as cold as stone. He did not say goodbye or check to see if his daughter was feeling okay. He turned his back and stormed away, shouting for his car to be brought around. He left Maya behind without a second glance, and I felt a huge wave of relief. The hospital garden was finally quiet, and the bright, hot lights were turned off. The sun was starting to set, casting a soft, golden light over the three of us. I stood there for a moment, just watching the two people I loved most in the world. Caleb was holding Maya tight, and she was resting her head on his shoulder. She was holding the wooden horse against her chest as if it were made of pure gold. I felt a big lump form in my throat and walked slowly toward them with heavy legs. I was so afraid to look Caleb in the eye because I thought he would be very angry. But when he looked up, his eyes were not angry at all. They were very kind. Tears ran down my face as I whispered how sorry I was for the lies I had told. "I was so scared of losing her, and I almost lost you too," I sobbed to him. Caleb did not say a single word or ask me for any more long explanations. He just opened his strong arm and pulled me into a very tight, warm hug. I felt his heart beating steadily against my ear, and I knew we were finally safe. Caleb wiped a tear from my chin and looked at the small wooden horse in Maya's hand. "We are not rich, Elena, and we don't have mansions or fancy ponies," he said softly. "But we are real," he whispered as he kissed my forehead, "and that is enough." Maya looked up at him with a big smile and said, "I love you, Daddy." We walked out of the hospital gates together and climbed into Caleb's old, rusty truck. Many months passed, and the cold winter slowly turned into a beautiful, bright spring. Maya recovered completely, and the healthy pink color returned to her young cheeks. We never heard from Dominic again, as the news said he moved to another country. We were still paying off the medical bills dollar by dollar, but we did not mind. One sunny afternoon, I sat on the porch and watched Caleb and Maya in the garden. They were laughing together while painting the wooden horse a bright, happy red. I knew then that a father is not defined by DNA or the money in a bank account. Dominic had the blood connection, but he was nothing more than a stranger to her. Caleb had no blood connection, yet he was the truest parent I have ever known. Real love is not flashy, and it does not need a camera crew to prove it exists. It is the person who stays when things are hard and peels an apple when you are weak. We do not have a castle, but we have a kingdom because we have each other.